Welcome, everybody. Today's guest, Amy Marks, is the VP of Industrialized Construction Strategy and Evangelism at Autodesk. She's known as the Queen of Prefab. At Autodesk, she informs product strategy, thought leadership, and convergence consulting for customers incorporating industrialized construction methodologies. Prior to joining Autodesk, she defined the language, process, and frameworks that are adopted by companies, universities, and countries around the world, reflecting the convergence of design, make, operate models. Notably, Amy was appointed by the Singapore government's Building and Construction Authority as an international expert to advise its design and construction productivity roadmap. Her thought leadership and tenacity leading alongside the government and industry resulted in unprecedented change and innovation, catapulting Singapore to worldwide recognition in the industrialized construction space. She's a graduate of the University of Florida and an alumna of Harvard Business School. Welcome, Amy. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining. So you are the person when it comes to industrialized construction. You are the expert. You've been doing it for over 20 years now. You've literally been the catalyst to where this industry has gone, and it's gone a long way over the past 20 years. What drew you to the industry or this portion of the construction industry, and how'd you find yourself there?
So I grew up in conventional construction, and I feel like, you know, everything about it was siloed. So if we were walking around a job site, I remember my dad looking at people looking in the ceiling, a bunch of trade contractors, and he would say, that's costing us money right now, or that's probably making us money right now. He didn't know at the time. So I feel like I recognized really early on that there was just this disconnect between what was being designed and what was being made. And, obviously it was sort of a cash for chaos situation. People were making money or losing money on those gaps of information or lack of information. So I don't know. I feel like, and I grew up in a place where it was just brute force that made it happen. We just make it work, and I felt like there was just a better way. So early on, over about, I'm aging myself, more than 20 years ago, bought a company that was doing steel and concrete volumetric modules for things like embassies and data centers and hospitals. And it just kind of went from there, and then opened up my own consultancy after fabricating that. We did both fabricating and consultancy for guys like, and ladies in the Singapore government and big companies like, semiconductor fab facilities and most of the big general contractors, tier one around the world, that it just really filled a need that they didn't understand how to necessarily design for and optimize prefabrication across, multiple trades and complexities within, really difficult jobs.
And when a lot of people think of prefabrication, they think like containers, and I remember you used to have a tagline, not just containers, like it's way more.
Hashtag not a container was a big thing for
Hashtag not a container. And I mean, we both know that there's so much more to it. How'd you get past like people thinking of it as just containers, and where has the industry gone from 20 years ago to now? Because it's gone tremendous places.
It's so funny. I think actually now what I try to remind people isn't it, no one ever asks me anymore, is this containers? Is it, trailers? That was like so 20 years ago, as we say. Now I think what people have to recognize is that, consultancies like McKinsey have actually reported that over the next like 10 to 13 years, almost half of everything in the $14 trillion ecosystem that we're a part of is moving towards industrialized construction. So, and when I say that, think of $1 billion hospital. If half of it is built in a factory, the other half has to accept it and understand, it's not like it's one big chunk and one other chunk. It's all interstitial spaces and things that are worked in. I think now what I mostly try to educate about is it's not just about volumetric modules that we see sexy things on the newspaper where it's like boxes stacking on boxes for high rises or hospitals in China or wherever. But the majority of the industrialized construction that's being done through prefabrication and manufacturing right now is sort of in this middle band of MEP subcontractors and contractors that are doing multi-trade assemblies, more like manufacturers, and then also building product manufacturers that are true manufacturers making larger and larger assemblies. So they're meeting in the middle. So anything that you're seeing like above the, ceiling, underground, in the walls, that has any kind of complexity to it, that's being done mostly these days, prefabricated or in a manufacturing setting. And so we don't necessarily recognize that like as boxes being stacked on boxes. I think, the true definition of industrialized construction is really applying manufacturing techniques to the entirety of the built environment cycle. So I think that's more of what I'm educating people about, that you could see a building in a city and think it's not prefabricated, and 60% of it is prefabricated or manufactured because of the MEP and the manufactured building products that are in it.
So I think the pandemic has really showed us that, well, we've had a labor shortage since the pandemic. And I think over the next, 5, 10 years, it's only going to become greater and greater. And I think industrialized construction and the growth of that sector of the industry is really going to help when looking at the labor shortages. But my question for you is, how are the unions responding to industrialized construction? I feel like they may feel like jobs are being taken away from them. What are you seeing right now?
I have to laugh because I've done several jobs in places like New York City or San Francisco or Chicago, and the unions are actually embracing prefabrication. And there are many union shops actually now that are coming up, or merit shops, depending on the city. You just said it. We don't have the labor. So I am working on right now a hospital in the middle of the United States. It's a $3.5 billion campus, but for doing the majority of it in prefabrication, they can't get it built. So it's not even really a question anymore. If you want critical infrastructure like digital infrastructure for data centers and hospitals, I'm not talking in emerging markets. I mean, here in the United States, if you want those things, and we need those things, there's no choice. It's not like we're taking jobs away from anybody. And again, depending on the authority having jurisdiction or the union stance in those places, it's literally being done everywhere. And I think unions that have embraced it in some of those locations are recognizing that their union members are getting better trained. They have better training programs for it. And they're exporting some of these products from some of these factories to other jurisdictions that don't necessarily have their, union representation in that. So of all things, it's funny when people bring that up as an objection. So we just, as an example, had the Advancing Prefabrication show in June. One of the panels I ran, Devin, was actually the presidents of ASHRAE, the Mechanical Contractors Association of America, and NECA. These are like organizations that represent many, many union members, within their ranks. And I asked that in the pre-meeting. I said, hey, do you know that general contractors sometimes say to me, what about unions? And literally one of the presidents said, they don't actually ask you that anymore, do they? And I said, they do. They ask it as if it were like happening. And they said, the guy said, that's so 10 years ago. And I said, I know. And I said, if you could say that on stage, that would be really great. And so I think, again, like that's the question you're asking that most people ask, because they don't recognize that that's not a thing anymore. Just like taking away jobs is not a thing. We don't have the resources on this planet to get the infrastructure that we need. And so we have to evolve. And we are evolving, and many have already evolved, in the last 10 to 20 years. So if you want these things to be done, there really is no choice. And if you want them to be done efficiently, there is no better way. It's not so much that you get the productivity of the pieces and parts you're making in the factory. If you don't have a lot of skilled labor on site, because those very complex areas are being done offsite and prefabricated offsite or manufactured offsite, once they're assembled on site, it frees your people up, your general contractor staff, to go do something else. So they can spend their time on something else. So you gain on the manufactured prefabricated element, and then you also gain on giving them focus for something else they need to spend their time on that's being built in situ, right? It's like a double win.
Absolutely. And you mentioned training at one point. So say I'm a subcontractor or general contractor looking to gain knowledge in prefabrication and enter this world. Where do I start?
So there's a lot of resources for you. It's one of the reasons why I came to Autodesk. So we're creating a knowledge center there, and a lot of it is around events like Autodesk University that's coming up. You should definitely register for that because it's virtual this year. So you have an opportunity all over the world to join that. I'm the ambassador of a show called the Advancing Prefabrication Show. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I'm talking, 3-4 times a week, like this, educating. We're also doing a master's level course that's being released in January, open worldwide to universities to utilize. And then, lastly, my old consulting business, when I came to Autodesk, really lives here now in the Convergence Consulting Group, where we work with companies that are seeing their business models change because of this. And the genesis of that group, interestingly enough, is out of the manufacturing consulting group here at Autodesk. So it's not just about tech, it's going to be about how to change your business, your enterprise workflows, the data, how you're collecting it. Unfortunately, we've had design separated from make. And now the big change is that we are using our technology and working with customers to create manufactured products down to the fastener level detail that then can inform design, so that designers aren't just making pretty pictures, they're actually using those manufactured elements to inform their design in real time. And I think that's super important, that we allow those. Most of my architects would love to do this, they just don't know all the rules of engagement for every single manufacturer on the planet, of how the adjacencies work down to the fastener level detail. So because of that, we have to kind of turn things on its head and give them the information, the data really that they need for manufacturing and assembly before they put, as we say, pen to paper. Not that we have paper anymore, but until we start our conceptual designs.
So I want to hit another fear, general fear that I know some people may have. It's the fact that when you oftentimes go to a manufacturer, you're writing a design build scope. They are designing their scope of work based upon their fabrication processes, based upon the needs of the building. And there's a fear of, well, if that company goes under, what do I do now? Like I'm midway through a project. How would I ever get out of that? Touch on that.
What do you do when a HVAC contractor goes out of business in the middle of your project? You have stored materials that you own. You take those materials and you take them for yourself. You find another contractor and you move forward. Many of these, first of all materials that are being utilized in prefabrication or manufacturing are materials. It's not like they're plastic pieces and parts that you can't replicate. It's not like there's some space stage thing that nobody, even not 99.9% of them, let's say, right? So, I've had when I was a fabricator, modules picked up from other fabricators, brought to my shop, finished out and sent out to the job, just like instead of going to the job site, getting another person there. Now, I will tell you that if that stops you from giving work to different ways of working, like to these fabricators, because you're part of the problem, right? So it's like the only way subcontractors, by the way, of the top 600 ENR MEP trade contractors, I think the top 300 do 99% prefabrication, right? So just so we're clear, like if you're talking about anything having to do with MEP, like you're fine because everyone's doing it. In the top 500, even 600 ENR subcontractors for MEP, they're doing prefabrication. So like, it's just a fallacy that nobody else can do it. Now, if you're talking about something more turnkey, like volumetric modules, where again, it becomes less and less mainstream, then yes, you're going to need to understand, like, it's still steel, it's still MEP. You could literally do an in situ steel frame and do any pieces and parts in there prefabricated if that was the option. You could take steel frames from any fabricator and put them on site and fit them out with pieces and parts that were, manufactured in a shop. There's just so many options, but letting that stop you from doing something that creates concurrency, right? Because that's sorry, I'm actually wearing ripped jeans today in my office, as you can see when I get excited. So we're a little casual here at home. But the cool thing about that, right, is that you can do anything. It's all the same pieces and parts. It's all about your process. And I think, I always say it's not hard to prefabricate pipe, right? It's hard to have leadership and contracts and risk management and people that understand all the things that stop you from prefabricating a pipe. That's the hard part, right? Prefabrication or manufacturing, we can do that. It's been done. You know that. You've seen a million ways. It's our internal processes, our skill sets that we have that stop us, our worries that stop us from doing something that's done every single day.
Do you see any fears when it comes to financing projects? The banks are a little bit cautious approaching a prefabricated project just because they might be the first time they're doing it. Or are we past that? Is that 10 years ago also and people get it?
That's probably not 10 years ago yet, right? So I would say banks are funding jobs every day that have manufactured prefabrication in them all the time. They're just typically done through the people and contractors that you don't think of as fabricators, right? Like I just said, you would never think of the top 300 MEP contractors as fabricators. They all are, right? So MEP Force is coming up, a big show that I do every year with all MEP, contractors. They all fabricate. So that'd be like saying no jobs on this planet have ever funded fabric. Of course, every job, every big job ever that has any kind of MEP in it has funded a job that has prefabrication in it. The ones that are a little bit more difficult that I think you're referencing are the ones that in totality are turnkey prefabrication from one vendor, right? That is, and again, we think of it because it's the stuff that we see on the front page of the newspaper, right? But it's not necessarily what's actually getting done in the majority of the times. That's a little bit more difficult, right? And I'm not going to lie, because they're not used to seeing it like that. The payment structure is different. You need to pay in a cadence that's very different. However, I think there are countries out there that are leading the charge, like the UK and Singapore, and even in places like Australia, that are creating different kinds of insurance and risk management profiles, different kinds of financing programs when you want to do that very specialty thing. But in reality, you're funding and every single job these days, anything that's of a certain size, you're doing tremendous amounts of complex prefabrication that's getting funded on a daily basis. What are you going to do when that subcontractor who's doing your multi-trade rack in the hospital and all of your multi-trade skids for the central utility plant, what happens when he goes out of business? Every hospital is done with those. Every hospital is doing prefabricated risers, just about. They're going to ship those to another subcontractor who's also doing that. And they're going to have to do funding and finance just like they would do for any other job. I do think there's room, though, for growth in the insurance and finance areas for specialty products that honestly should be better because you have less people on site. You have a safer environment. You should be getting benefit as the general contractor or the owner, just like they did for OSIP. There should be a better product out there for when you're removing that risk off site to an offsite location.
So sticking on the, going to one prefabrication contractor for the totality of the project. I know a lot of people think they're going to save time, they're going to save money. Are they saving both? Where do you see the benefit of it? And what's your thoughts on that?
There's so many factors of why you would do it and why you would save and for what reason, right? So you just said one, we don't have a lot of skilled labor on site. There's a reason that estimates are called estimates in construction. They're not real. If you look at any kind of number and any kind of study that's ever been done on estimates, the chances of you hitting those numbers are very low, right? Why? Because we're making those estimates on things we don't actually know how they're made. When we make those estimates, we don't know who's making it and how they're made, and down to the fastener level detail, right? So I think, when you're talking to these companies that want to do in totality, what you're saying is volumetric modules, right? Boxes that create stackable buildings and are basically the structure of the building with everything, pre-kitted inside. I think you have to recognize that most of the time, when I work with somebody, a consultant for the very first time, I want to shoot for cost neutrality, for a cost target. So target value design, right? Let's come up with a number that we know we want to pay, and let's shoot to design things as criteria to that number based with this manufacturer. That's important. There is no comparison, right? So this notion of like, would it be cheaper if I did this or that? I always say when I consult in my group, I always say, stop asking me if it's cheaper, because it's not comparing it to something that's real. Like, let's take that hospital, for example. I just said that can't be built, but for prefabrication, the $3.5 billion, $4 billion campus. Why would I compare that to what I could build on site if I can't build it on site? It doesn't exist. It's like saying I would like an Amy Marks phone. Well, Amy Marks doesn't make a phone. How much cheaper is it than my iPhone? It doesn't really matter. I don't make a phone. It's impossible for me to manufacture a phone. So you have to kind of look at things like, we're asking the same questions we get paid for as general contractors. That's been our skill set, right? It's like, here's my drawing. How much does it cost? What's the cheapest way to do it? Those days are over. By the way, general contractors, if you're not paying attention to the McKinsey report, it basically says you're going to not be in business in the next 10 years unless you adjust your business model to be more like either a manufacturer or a systems integrator of these pieces and parts. Hear me clearly. You will not exist on this planet unless you adapt and adjust your business model. It's not my opinion. It is literally based in the numbers there. So when you look at those charts, so you have to know that in the new world of convergence, where you are now looking at as an integrator of these pieces and parts, you don't utilize the same processes and the same skills and ask the same questions anymore. You're trying to make that integration as easy as possible, as quickly as possible, as seamless as possible. So if you're new to this for the first time, first go seek some advice and counseling, because no one does anything almost for the first time ever on this planet. Somebody on this planet has done it before. And in construction, our egos make us think that's not true, but it is. Go find somebody who's done it. And secondly, you want to shoot for neutrality, cost neutrality, schedule neutrality, certainty. I'm always looking for certainty. Certainty is better than savings. My big customers will tell you that certainty is always better than savings. Opening up a building, a hospital 3 weeks early is not good either. They're not ready for that. They're not mobilized for that. They're not ready in a hotel to start booking rooms anyway. So it's like certainty is better, always than savings. And so shoot for neutrality, shoot for a realistic target, and stick to that. Design to that target, schedule to that target. We have real-time capacity planning for production with, geolocation tracking. There's lots of things that can get you more certain, right? There's lots of tech and processes. But when you're new, you can't expect the first time you do something to be exponentially better than what you've been doing for the last 100 years. That's like saying you're a football player, and unless you're Tim Tebow and you're going to play baseball tomorrow, you're going to be Babe Ruth. You're not. Maybe Tim Tebow's not even Babe Ruth. I'm a Gator, so go Gators. But like even Tim Tebow can't be, like Babe Ruth the first day out, right? He's got to practice a little bit. He's got to figure out how to do this versus football. You can't do that. Even the best of the best, the elites of the elite can't be as good as they are the first time out the door. It takes practice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So outside of the volumetric modules, there's a ton of other options, like things that you don't even realize that are out there. And you've started touching on some of them. Can you just tell us, like, what are the new stuff you're seeing? What is stuff that's really exciting you? What are you loving these days?
God, I love so many things. Like, I think, we know each other. So, I'm like completely obsessed with this all the time. I think actually it's funny. I'm less excited, not less. I love all the physicality of like industrialized construction houses many different things, right? So it's about tech, like IoT sensors and big data and analytics. It's about building information modeling as foundational elements, design, what we were saying, in design, that data that informs informs design with manufacturing and assembly. There's like the physicality of things that are exciting. I mean, listen, OR rooms, those are amazing. Anything in hospitals. I love any piece parts in hospitals, any elements in hospitals that are MEP risers, racks, nurse call stations, bathroom pods. And any kind of central utility plan. I always look for anything that's cellular in nature, like repeatable or really heavy MEP stuff. I'm really excited about new things that are actually, especially things that are like cleaning themselves now, like especially in OR ceilings and things, HVAC systems. I just saw, interestingly enough, some cool stuff of HVAC systems being built into panelized exterior wall, just cool stuff, right? But cooler than that, I think the tech that's going to enable all that, the way in which we're looking at manufacturing software like mechanical CAD and things like Inventor and Fusion that are letting us design things down to a faster level detail, all those pieces and parts I just said, creating a way that you can use those parametric models, right? Those scalable with rules-based parametric computational design models, and how those are actually informing designers to use real things and then apply tech algorithms to make the right arrangement of those things so that they get the outcomes for their owners and for the businesses they're looking for. The tech that's attached to these pieces and parts, it's like that piece part that I said I'm so excited about. I'm excited about the operating room ceiling as a manufactured item, but I'm more excited about the data layers of metadata that you can attach to it, of sustainability, of bill of materials, bill of process, supply chain capacity, the data that allows you, productization allows you to attach to it to get predictive analysis. What if you didn't have to estimate anything, Devin? What if you could actually just look at what the combination of pieces and parts in that building were, know the actual cost of those and the supply chain availability of where you're getting it? What if you didn't need to do an estimate because you pushed a button and it told you what the schedule and cost and outcomes were based on real
I would
thing.
love that. That would be amazing. Then people would win projects based upon the quality and the people of your work, not just, well, who's doing it the cheapest,
Right. Who does the best guess at the cheapest? It's not even do it the cheapest, right? So it's like what I just described, funny enough, exists everywhere else on our planet in almost every other industry, but for ours. Think about it. When you go on Amazon.com and you buy something, and they show up at your door 3 weeks late and go like, sorry, it's actually a little bit more money. We were wrong. No, we have an ecosystem that supports a supply chain capability and capacity globally that has a certainty and cost and schedule. And we can have that here too. It's like, you're young, right? Like I'm much older than you are. And like I have the same expectation of this ecosystem, this cash for chaos ecosystem, where these big players that are there now, serial owners, by the way, it's not the little one hotel guys that are going to change the world, unfortunately. They're going to benefit from the Googles, the Facebooks, the Amazons, the HCAs, the Intels, the Owens Cornings, all these guys that are doing big projects across the geos that need certainty. And so what do you do when you need certainty across the world? You start creating certainty of pieces and parts that are aggregated together to create data centers and hospitals and semiconductor fab facilities. You can't leave it to the contractor to guess in Shanghai how much your semiconductor plant is going to be, right? You'll benefit from the needs and sort of the productization that happens and the workflows technically that get worked out of how to enable that piece part. The small hotel owner and builder will actually benefit one day as that trickles down from the top down. You know what I mean?
I love it. That's changing the industry. That's changing the world. And you mentioned it, like this is the only industry that doesn't have that certainty. Like, why don't we have that? We should have that. And
Yeah.
it's awesome. It's awesome. So, you got picked up by Autodesk, an amazing company recently. They picked you up, an amazing freaking person to have. How's it been? What's the focus? What are you working on these days? Talk to me a little bit about that.
So yeah, I mean, I talked to Autodesk for about 2 years before I came over and gave up my own business to go there. And I think I've actually created some great change within the company and then also working with some of the customers. I went there because, Andrew Anagnost, our CEO, asked me this. And I talk about this actually in a lot of things that, he's like, why Autodesk? Right. And so when you talk about convergence, right, changing of industries that are melding, changing of technology that's melding, right? Technology, this is no longer my phone. This is like my map, my phone, my matchmaker, my social network, my pictures, my camera, it's everything, right? That's convergence of technology. Process is converging, right? So that design, make, operate process. No one's just sitting in just their silo anymore, right? And because of that, technology and process industries are converging, right? We see a lot of guys, all my big general contractors are owning fab shops now. All of my MEP contractors are becoming manufacturers. Even my owners, I have architects that are owning fab shops now. Think Canon Design, right? They own their own fabrication facilities. So that convergence, I said to Andrew, like if you think about what they own in technology at Autodesk, they have if convergence is chess, right? If the manifestation of convergence is chess, like I'm basically obsessed with chess. I sleep with my phone, right? Like I hear about people send me pictures from around the world. I'm obsessed with chess. You have all the chess pieces, Andrew, but you have the nicest chessboard in the world, which is also our development platform, which is Forge, so that you can connect these pieces together and they can talk to one another. For industrialized construction, what's happening with convergence, though, you heard me say it. It's not about designing something, then figuring out how to make it and then operate it. You really make. You have to rearrange the chess pieces to play chess. And so my job at Autodesk is to talk about rearranging the chess pieces, to move the make in front of design to inform it. And then also the operate up front so that we create playbooks for owners with pieces and parts and elements they can reuse and understand the data for. So I really came to Autodesk because it was one of the places I felt in the world that had the most chess pieces and the nicest board, enabling me to play chess, because I love to play chess. So I think all of my customers want to play chess. And, I feel like I'm making that connection, hopefully, between the customers that work through Autodesk that were struggling or are struggling still or haven't come to us yet. And making this easier for them, right? Never ask me if it's cheaper. Just ask me if it's easier. Easier always leads to better and faster and more value, which may be cheaper, maybe neutral, maybe whatever value is defined as for you as a customer. So that's why I came. I just felt like of all the places in the world, there were very few I could go to play chess.
No, I love it. I love it. And I'm going to leave you with one more question. You are a female who has found great success in a male-dominated industry. Talk to me about that. Talk to the other female listeners out there that may have a fear of entering a male-dominant industry. You're a powerful woman, no doubt about it. And people get motivated by just listening to you talk.
I mean, I'm going to give you the real answer because I speak at a lot of women's conferences. It won't be the answer that you probably think is going to come out of my mouth. You should be scared. It's not fun. It's very hard. People either love me or they hate me. They don't like to hear a woman raise her voice, speak with my hands, curse. I apologize. I grew up in construction. I'm from New York and I was a competitive rugby player for 15 years. The chances of me not cursing are very little. Like I try my best, but the chances of me not being intimidating are very little. And so, people, I'm telling you, women out there, it's a tough game. And like I support women. I talk at a lot of women's, I mentor a lot of women and men around the world. And I call people out when they look. Last week, I had a guy say to me on a call, if you've ever been on a job site, Amy, now I'm sorry. That's like, you can't say that to me. I'm not going to allow you to say that to me. Or you sound so angry. I hear it every week. I'm 50 years old. I'm not going to say it's easy. It's very hard. It puts me in jeopardy on a daily basis being a female in an all male dominated industry. If somebody doesn't tell you that, they're lying. I got to tell you the truth. Listen, the harder the truth to tell, the truer the friend that's going to tell it to you. So what do? Don't let it stop you from doing what you're passionate about. Find the right place. Listen, everyone talks about being your authentic self. I want to find a company that accepts my authentic self. Find a company that allows you to be your authentic self, whatever that is. And if you're a change agent or you're a contractor, or whatever you do for a living, make sure you find a company that has a culture that allows you to be your authentic self and to speak out courageously. And I think, there are companies out there that you can do that in this ecosystem. It's very diverse. Don't let it stop you from doing what you're passionate about, but also don't be naive.
Love it. I've got a phrase that nothing worth it in life comes easy. And, you got to take down that hard path. I love it.
They say well-behaved women rarely make history. So
True.
I have to remind people of that, if you're an agent for change like me, you're going to ruffle some feathers. That's the nature of change. We rip things apart and put them back together. It's just tough. And by the way, even if you're not a change agent, just by being a woman in this space, you are a change agent. So I support you, and I'm pulling for you guys and ladies out there.
And Amy, keep ruffling feathers. I support you, and I love you very much. For all the listeners out there, Amy is my sister, my older sister. Some of you might not have known that, but you make me proud every single day. And being the mother that you are to my niece, Mackenzie, like I just get so much joy watching you do what you do, watching her grow up. And I do love you very much, Amy.
I love you. I'm super proud of you. And look, you had to say older. That's fine.
You said it already.
I'm way older than you. Yes. But yeah. And honestly, besides being my brother, we need people like you in this space. We need younger people that have a diverse perspective that are going to challenge us to do better things, right? Like you challenge me every day to be a better person, to be a better sister, to be a better mom, godfather of my child. Honestly, you're challenging people out in the world to just be better and to do things differently. And so diversity and perspective we need. So I love you too. Mackenzie loves you. We all love you, Devin. And I'll come anytime to help you or any of your customers, obviously.
Thank you so much. This was awesome. And thanks.
Thank you.